management. Please help me welcome Heather and Jonathan. And here's his clicker.
Thank you.
Short, I have to take the stairs.
1 minute, okay.
It's not our presentation.
All right, we'll start anyway without slides. I think it's really interesting. I haven't been to this presentation, this conference for a couple of years. And one of the observations I've really noticed is in the last being here versus 2 years ago, is a much greater focus on real time, which is really convenient because that's essentially what our presentation is about. Joel, if he's still here, talked this morning about the fact that now media decisions are made in a fraction of a second. Hi, Joel. And it's essentially from a marketing point of view, the need to make decisions in real time is becoming more and more important. And within that, you need to know what's working, what's not working from a brand performance point of view. Essentially our presentation today and our focus for our partnership is about how do we start to develop tools that can help you understand your performance in real time. And to start with a quote actually from a guy called Brad Jakeman at Pepsi. And he talks about how a few years ago they had $4 million to produce 4 pieces of creative, 8 months to do so. Now it's 4,000 pieces of content. And you have a few hours to produce these pieces of content. And the reality is that brands have moved from expecting a single piece of content to move the needle in terms of brand perception, to using a range of different content across different channels to help do this. And still within this is the need to understand what is working and what is not working. And in addition to this, there's a whole range of other kind of marketing trends which are driving this need for kind of more real-time information. So first of all, fragmentation of media and the fact that more and more of it is addressable. You can target it to different people. Movement beyond paid advertising, as you all know, into owned and earned. Content has always been king, but it's never more so than right now. But importantly, we're now in the era where agencies are starting to create personalized content through AI. And we're going to see a real growth of this over the next 5 to 10 years as well. So again, more and more content out there trying to move the needle on brands. Campaigns are no longer kind of a one-off. It's always on, adapting as you go, making decisions and changing investments as you go. More and more campaigns are driven by consumers rather than by the brands. And finally, this is all being done in real time and more through things like DMPs, linking through to the actual outcomes. What's the sales outcome that we expect from this campaign? And so this is putting a lot of pressure on the insights industry, clearly. The old style of doing brand and ad tracking is really creaking. I think there's still a real strong need to understand long-term brand performance, but the role of those brand trackers is ultimately changing. So we need to think about things differently. We need to think about what we need to do to keep up. So first of all, we need to understand more than just the impact of paid advertising. We need to understand a full range of opinions across different channels. We need to be real-time or as near to real-time as we can possibly be. One of the things when I personally worked on, I guess, brand tracking over the years, is that they're not particularly sensitive to activity. If you think about a TV ad, sure, a brand tracker might pick up the impact of a TV ad, but when you're talking about 4,000 pieces of content, it's very hard to think about that. So instead of thinking top-down representative samples, we need to think about bottom-up. How can we look at what's going on, what people are talking about in the marketplace, and not necessarily worry about that top-down view? It needs to be predictive. It needs to be linked to outcomes. We need to know that what we're tracking is meaningful, and it tells us what's going to happen in the future. And finally, really, what we need to do is to make sure we're being cost-efficient. It's our big belief that you're not going to have one big piece of brand and ad tracking monitor that's going to just focus on trying to cover everything. It's about little bits and pieces that work together to tell you a more complete story, some acting in real time, some acting in a longer time frame. So whatever we do here has to be very cost efficient. So the question is, why Twitter? And if we could just play the video now. It's going to work.
I think he said he was going in the Hudson.
I have using Twitter to send pictures from space.
Germany are the champions of the world! And two from mid-court. Yes!
And for all rights, for women's rights.
Today marks 6 months since our Chibok girls were taken from their school.
Some of you may remember a colleague of mine who's recently retired called Larry Friedman, and he's presented a couple of years ago on how he used a range of different sources, social search and so on, to predict things like equity in sales. But what we learned through their model, and we've done lots of different brands of many categories, many different markets, what we learned was nearly always Twitter is the most important source. Because of that, because it's a reflection of society, it's a reflection of what's going on, it's where people are talking about things. And so what we've done in the last year or so is work with Twitter to start working on exclusively with Twitter on this and to evolve this idea of being able to predict brand equity and sales. And what the kind of unique benefits of working with a single source are is the ability to drive consistency in both in terms of the models that are applied by market and by category, but also in terms of the modeling. So behind this kind of prediction models is a lot of analytics, and the more sources you have, the more times you have to re-engineer it every time you change market and change category. But by working with a single source, we are now able to do this extremely efficiently and in a very, very fast, real-time manner. So I'm just going to flick through this because we'll show you the examples of these anyway in the interest of time. I'm just going to show you a quick case study of some of the work we've been doing. And just show you a couple of outputs from this. So we've done a few different categories and a few different markets so far. This is beer, one of my favorite topics, and this is from the UK. And over a couple of years, there's something like 280,000 tweets. Having removed all the tweets that weren't relevant, this is what was left. And there's a few outputs I just want to show you to really emphasize the point. The first of these is the way that we can model what we call a synthetic score of equity. So in the grey line is the observed brand equity from the survey, and in the blue line is the synthetic score. Now that synthetic score is made up of a whole range of different Twitter metrics, be it ad spend, be it the kind of sentiment, the themes, and so on. So lots of different things go into that. Now what's really important is actually we can predict, with this model in beer, 8 weeks out. So we know what the equity is going to be in 8 weeks based on the synthetic score. So we know what the survey score will be based on the synthetic score 8 weeks out. The second thing that's the kind of key output from it is what's actually driving these shifts in equity. So in this example, what was important was a short-term piece around sponsorship and a long-term component around character. And equally, some of the negativities around short-term availability and things like heritage, again, a long-term metric. So covering both. And of course, the power of this is that we can dig down into the exact content that is driving these changes, which Heather will show you shortly. And the final piece is then using it as a component within media mix modeling. So we know that we can kind of build this in with other things around things like seasonality, promotions, and so on, media spend, to be able to predict sales from this. So how helpful is this as a brand manager if you're making decisions on a daily basis about what content is working, what content is not working, if you can start to predict what the outcomes are and how's it going to impact your equity and how's it going to impact your sales in the future. Before I hand over to Heather, I just wanted to talk very quickly about how we see it working with brand tracking, because I think brand tracking, as I say, still has a very important role to play. Firstly, it's really about how is equity being perceived in different target groups. So we can't necessarily get to segments in social data particularly easily. You can look at demographics, but not segments. And then there's always these things around direct questions of interest, the key topics, and monitoring strategic attributes. I mean, what people talk about in Twitter is what they're interested in. They don't necessarily always talk about what you're interested in. So you might have certain attributes which actually are low energy attributes that people won't talk about. And so if you want to know how you're performing on that versus competitors, perhaps you need to make sure that you're including these in your brand tracking. But really what the real-time brand management tool is for is about predicting health, knowing what content is working, in what channels it's working in, both inside and outside of Twitter, knowing what competitors are doing. And you can do it independently of a tracker or in collaboration with, and you can use it as a media mix input. But what I'm going to do now is pass over to Heather, who's going to show you some examples of how we see it being used by clients.
Which button do I press?
The green one.
Okay. Great. So I would be remiss at this point in time not to give you all my Twitter handle so you can follow me. So Media Research Chick. Would love to get some new followers out of this presentation. But yeah, we get questions from our clients regularly and our agency partners as well in terms of how predictive is Twitter data and could they be using Twitter data throughout the various stages of planning. And I'm sure that many of you have interrogated social media data and faced hurdles or challenges in terms of its applicability to the general population or representativeness to your average plebeian. And that's where the Twitter and TNS partnership has been extremely powerful in that Twitter has lifted the hood and offered to share proprietary data with the approval of our pilot clients that we've worked with in order to really shift the approach and the way that we go to market with this. And these research findings that were presented today, we see this as something that could drive actionable insights throughout the planning process and really impact marketing decision making. So as we think about planning, activation, and measurement, being able to really change the way that things are happening here. And if we think about applying those model outputs to real-time Twitter conversations that are happening moving forward, it could really start to shift the way that people are able to make changes in real time. So what we did was we took that same UK beer case study and we mocked up some visualizations of what this could look like if we were to take real-time conversations and apply the model outputs to that. So this would be, an overview of everything that we're seeing. And it looks just like another social media dashboard, but it's not for two core reasons. The first being that it's based on external outcomes such as brand tracking, potentially something we could match to sales, as we've already seen in the case study that, in some of the case studies we've done, that there is a linkage there to sales. And it's also more predictive than brand tracking data. You're getting this information as the conversations are happening. So, you're not waiting for survey responses to come in to clean and to weight that data. Additionally, it's predictive in that it could surface long-term trends before, let's say, your competitors who are not accessing something like this would be able to pick it up before it's really in the foreground. So we really see a lot of value here for advertisers to be able to go in and shift their current marketing strategy and decide to make different changes. And the reason that there's value here is that not only do they know that their brand equity has gone down or that competitive brand equity has gone up, But we also have lots of diagnostic data. So all of the inference models we have on our users and information that we collect, we can then take that out of what we're seeing from the model and really inform what changes should be made in real time. So here's an example of looking at your competitive strategies. How are competitors performing as it relates to brand equity? How is that changing over time? And perhaps this information can be overlaid with marketing campaign information and could be a driver of performance measurement as well. Another example is looking at the themes. And so the themes that Jonathan had brought up before, how are those now performing in real time? And not only looking at which themes are relevant to the category or relevant to your brand or your competitors, breaking that down into sentiment, what's positive or negative. And then even further, going even more granular and looking at what are the particular conversations around that theme that are happening. So a brand can decide whether they address any challenges or leverage those opportunities. This could really inform content optimization and also could be a driver of sponsorship or event activities, whether it's happening on Twitter or even outside of Twitter as well. And then lastly, we collect all of this information on our users so that we're able to understand more about audiences. So we can look at those that are talking about the category, those that are talking about the brand, and again, competitors, and start to break that audience down more further. And this is, again, in real time and not looking at syndicated data that we're getting, that's maybe 6 months or a year old. So we can understand their demographics. We can look at who are the social media influencers and how can you, best engage them. Also look at what are some of their interests. Is humor more relevant in this category, or is it more about sports and sponsorships with athletes? And then lastly, being able to also look at what are their buying styles. Are there different segments that are more health conscious versus those that are more interested in premium brands? So there's a lot of value in terms of your targeting optimization in real time and changes that you might want to leverage, especially thinking about what we were talking about earlier today related to DMPs and that real time kind of changes that could be made.
And we just want to sum up by making a couple of points. I think one of the interesting things, again, going back to my point around coming here 2 years ago, 2 years ago, everyone was still talking about, is there any value in social data? How do we use it? And there's a bit of skepticism. I think really now, from hopefully from today, but also from some of the other presentations that have been going on the last few days, it's pretty clear that we've realized social data is crucially important for insights. It is predictive of what's going to happen in the future in mainstream society. And really, the quote here is to kind of make the point that we started this approach probably about 5 years ago as a skunkworks project. It was really just about seeing what we could do with social data, with other pieces of information. And over the years, we've kind of tried, we failed, we tried, and we tried different things. And we really believe that we've got to the point now where we've got a solution which is going to help people manage their brand in real time. And I guess all we'd encourage you to do is to do the same. Is think about how can you use things like social data, other sources to help the brand managers, the marketing managers, to make sure that they're using insights in real-time decision-making. Thank you.
Questions? While you're contemplating, I just wanted to say, so that's why you guys need to tweet right now, so next year we know what to predict or what to expect, right, for IIeX. So if there's no immediate questions, then please help me thank these guys for their fabulous presentation.